Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. We talk a lot about the battlefield of business here at Bulletproof Selling. What does that mean? All right, am I shooting at my prospects? Am I treating them, like the enemy? Absolutely not. What I mean by a battlefield of business is that every single day, as a salesperson, as a small business owner, as somebody that's out there trying to deliver value to the people that you're selling to, you're in a battle. You're not in a battle with your prospects, but you are in a battle nonetheless. You're in a battle against your competition, and you're in a battle against everything else that was on your prospect's calendar. You're in a battle to convince them that the time they should be spending with you is worth their time when they could be doing anything else, personally or professionally. That's the battle that we face every single day. And I see too many salespeople fall back on hope as their strategy. Well, hope doesn't work in sales, just like it doesn't work on actual battlefields where I was trained, where I was taught how to look for the things that are working great amongst a whole bunch of processes, and how do we scale those? How do we make sure that those are used not just occasionally, but consistently? So that's what we bring here to you at Bulletproof Selling, a way for you to remove hope from how you sell so that you can sell more, but more importantly, so that you can serve more. And over the course of the last few years that we've been running this show, we've been able to have on people from all over the world, people from Hall of Fame speakers to best-selling authors to people that are out there leading sales teams to those that are working with sales teams to make sure that they're systemizing how they sell so that they can sell more and serve more as well. Now, we get to interview a lot of people here at Bulletproof Selling. Every single show, as a matter of fact, we're interviewing somebody because it'd be a lot of fun for me just to talk to myself, but I could do that, here at the house or in the office. Doesn't really need, an audience for that. I want to make sure that you're hearing the interaction that happens when two people get together that are passionate about sales, that build something together that can be used consistently, scalably, and repeatedly. When we do that, we're building sales systems. So when I get to interview somebody who's not just an expert at interviewing others for their systems, at building systems and building processes, but somebody that brings a whole new perspective from an international level, well, that really opens my mind. It opens my eyes up to the fact that the things that I'm dealing with here as a salesperson in the United States, they're shared by salespeople all over the world. The need for systems, the need for process, the need for removing hope isn't just something that's locally based. It's something that worldwide we could all benefit from. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome somebody on that's going to help us talk about that and solve some systemic problems in sales. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jakub Hon. Jakub, welcome to Bulletproof Selling, sir.
Hi, Sean. Thank you very much for having me here on the show and for the warm introduction.
Absolutely, sir. So if you can't tell already from my viewers and my listeners, Jakub has a bit of an accent. Well, that's because he's gotten to work all over Europe as a salesperson throughout his career. I'm excited to hear about that. Jakub, tell us a little bit about your sales experience, what got you into sales, why you're passionate about it, and kind of, the overview of the cool places that you've gotten to work, because you've gotten to bounce all over the place as a salesperson. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, well, I always say that the sales is pretty much the first job you can get without any proper education because it's like, oh yeah, go and sell this one. If you do that, here you have commission. So that's pretty much how I started with my brother, where when he had company and I was selling the stuff from his company, small IT development company. But then I started liking it. I went a little bit firstly then afterwards I went to sales analytics. So I was pretty much preparing reports for the salespeople, and I get back to sales. I went to the not pharmaceutical, healthcare industry, and then I went to tech, which stuck to me with where I stuck till now because I found it very exciting. And that was I moved from Czech Republic to Netherlands. I was working for that startup, and I was taking care of CE region, selling there. So you have a lot of different nationalities and different approaches, which was quite fun. Sometimes I was making just business by texting people because they didn't want to meet with me. And then I came back to Czech Republic and started working on SALESDOCk together with a friend of mine. So we co-founded SALESDOCk, where we started to focus on how helping tech businesses to set up their sales departments. We initially started as a sales outsourcing company, but then we moved more into the consultancy and interim head of sales company. So right now our job is either to be the right hand of the sales leader and to help him to build a company or get more out of the sales team, or we put there our guys who just get into the company and build a team, get the team on the numbers, and then hand over the team to new head of sales once they start working.
And so the company that you're leading today, SALESDOck, that's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. So
Perfect.
On a daily basis, we have several people and we're discussing how we can improve our playbook to build a team faster and how does it work on different markets. Because with our clients, we get a bunch of experience how to sell to the biggest companies that you want to get to the Walmart, to CFO of the Walmart. And at the same time, we get also experience with getting to smaller companies which are somewhere in Europe.
I love it. So you've got this company now, because you're just talking my language, right? Playbooks, process. That's exactly what we're about here at Bulletproof Selling. So I'm curious, though, the differences that you find across Europe, where you have these different cultures. And I'm stateside based, never had to sell into Europe, but I imagine that there's going to be regional differences here as well. So I'm curious to get your perspective. Did the way that you sold when you're in the Czech Republic, did it change a lot when you moved to the Netherlands, or are all the basics the same and we're all just people, we all need to be convinced of the same things? Is there a difference?
Well, the huge difference is once you go on the bigger market, the competition is way higher. That's as you said, you're on the battlefield with your competition, and if you're not professional enough, you're gonna lose that. So I always say it in a way. We have also, do you watch ice hockey or soccer is becoming quite popular in the US, right? So there are plenty of European leagues in Europe for ice hockey, but NHL is just a different game. Only the best out of the best get there, and they need 3 years of adaptation in AHL to get into the NHL. So, and there's the competition, and that's also in the sales. So the bigger market again, it becomes more competitive, and for sure you have some specifics. If you sell in the German market is very conservative. You have to have German speaker, you have to have German support, you have to have relevant German references that they take you relevant. Whereas in the US and the UK, US is usually quite more open to test out new things, but still, for many startups in Europe, it's easier to sell to the US multinational company than to German one. On the other hand, still you need to have the process, and you need to look professional and credible.
So let's talk about the sales process then, because this is something that I feel like is going to be universal for helping salespeople remove hope and replace it with certainty. You've gotten to work with a lot of companies. You've been in companies of your own. When I'm working with salespeople, I find that one of two things, is the case when I step in there. They either don't have a process at all, everybody's building it as they go, or they have a process, but it's not being adhered
Nobody follows.
to. Nobody follows it. Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about what you've encountered in the companies that you work with. Do you see more of one or the other, or is there a third category that I'm missing?
Now, usually there is some level of the sales process. The thing is that either the sales process is not enforced, or the sales process is very not well defined, if I can say it in this way. So it's not pretty clear what should happen in the stage 2, what should happen in the stage 3. And the salespeople then don't follow it. It's more like a gut feeling. Oh well, I feel that should be stage 3, and the probability of closing is 70%, and this one the probability should be 50%. And it's just based on the emotions. Like I had a really good conversation with this guy around the coffee, and he told me, hey, we definitely need this solution, so bang, 70%, and they're going to buy it. But when you start getting into the detail and asking, hey, so how do they make a decision? Who is the actual decision maker? Why they should buy it? What's the urgent inside of the company? How much money you bring them, or how much risk you save them? Then you start realizing the salespeople don't know anything about it, because they were just too optimistic about having one good or several good conversation with one person, and they don't move forward. So for that, we always look at it. Hey, so in the company, if you have a bigger company, there are always 20% of the salespeople which are crushing the quota. And so put them into one room and let them tell you how do they make business, what do they exactly do, what are their tactics. You put it on the paper. Based on that, you see, hey, this is actually, they will most probably use the same things And you start defining the sales process. If you take that afterwards and take it to the rest of the organization, then you start seeing, okay, they're not following. And the way how you make it, how you usually get the buy-in from the rest of the organization is, let's do the loss review. So guys, here is the sales process, and let's look at the opportunities which we lost and why we lost them. And you will see that you were skipping some steps, that you were not following it.
Yeah.
You try to cut the corners, but it doesn't work in sales like that. It will always beat you at the end, because you try to speed up, but then the client is not educated enough, or you didn't talk to all the 5 stakeholders you should have, and your competition did that, so that's why you lost.
And I want everybody to hear what Jakub's saying, because I hear this from sales leaders all the time. They say, we've invested a lot of time and money. We've hired a Sean or a Jakub to come in here and build us a sales process, but nobody's using it. Well, what he's just given you is a very easy strategy to use. Well, easy not in time, but easy in implementation, in that you're not responsible as a sales leader, as a sales enablement person, or even as a sales manager for building the entire thing from the ground up. Go to your highest performers, have them build it, and then what you can use then is a template that they've built, the team has built, not you in the ivory tower, but people in the field have given you the feedback. Here's best practices or better practices, because maybe there's not ever a best, but here's what's working today. Are we using it? Let's debrief a lost sale. Here are the steps that we missed in the process that your folks have told me is a best practice. That's exactly the way to do it, Jacob. I absolutely love that, because I see so many people do it the other way, which is, well, we read this book on sales. Here's the steps we should be following. And every salesperson is immediately like, well, that's not going to work in our industry for these reasons. And they've got pretty valid reasons why it's different. So I love that, you're taking it from the field, you're bringing it up. Here's how it works. Where are we missing it? This is a great, easy process to have. But I'm curious, Jacob, on your end, where do you see salespeople relying on hope more than they should in their sales process? Is it that it's always going to be there and I can just reference it whenever, it's never going to change? Or is it that I'm going to remember every step because I got trained on it 3 months ago and we haven't looked at it since then? Where do you see hope really playing into sales process that's letting salespeople down?
Yep. I think it's the mindset thing, okay, where as many of the salespeople are hungry people, optimistic, seeing opportunities everywhere. That's who we are usually as a salespeople. Then we tend to forget to be a little bit critical as well. And I'm not saying to be pessimistic in your life, but it's more about, let's look at the opportunities and let's not clap on the shoulders all the time, and look at it from the perspective, hey, let's not discuss why they should buy it. Let's discuss why they should not buy it. What can potentially destroy this deal? And you do that with your leader on your weekly or weekly review. And you start coming up with some ideas and say, hey, that's actually potentially harm us, or we didn't talk to this person. You also have your sales process in front of you and you say, this one we have completed, and here I have 5 milestones which I didn't complete. So let's discuss how can we complete them? How can I get to the economic buyer? How can I build a champion? Let's discuss how can we build up the ROI for them? What information do we need for them? And what level of interaction do we need for them? And the magic will start happening. Very often also with the salespeople, it happens like whenever I'm on the sales review and somebody tells me, I think, or I assume it's, oh yeah. So write it down, go and call your prospect.
Because this is a really good insight. So the thing that we did in the military that was very similar to this, because the stakes are very high on the battlefield. If we mess this up, it means not just that deals aren't coming home, but that people aren't coming home. So a process that we would use that sounds a lot like what you're saying is to build our plan, and then before we executed it, to take a look at where are the main points this could fail. So instead of just being optimistic and looking at all the ways it could succeed, I mean, we assume it's a decent plan or we wouldn't have put the time and effort into building it. But we so often in sales miss the other side of the coin, which is where could this fail? And asking the question, why shouldn't this person buy from me? Allows us to do a lot of things before we're ever on the phone or face-to-face with a prospect. It allows us to look at, are we credible enough? Are we bringing enough real-life examples? Are we providing enough value? All these things that could tank the sale after we've invested a lot of time and money in it, we have an opportunity to address before they ever become a problem. So let's dive into this as a system, Jacob, because I don't think we've ever gotten to build something like this before in Bulletproof Selling, which is the idea of closing the gaps before the gaps appear, figuring out why someone shouldn't buy from me. So in the military, every time we use a new system or we implement a new system or update a system, we're removing a little bit more hope from our strategy. And it works the same way in sales. Every new process I know that your company helps the sales team implement takes away that much more hope. So when we talk about trimming hope away, we just use this acronym TRIM as a very simple way to build a system. So the T in TRIM is the trigger. Where do I need to trigger this system, Jacob, in my sales cycle? Does it need to happen before I'm on the phone, right before I'm getting ready to like hop on the Zoom or step into the client's office? Where do I trigger a system that allows me to look at where all the ways this could fail? Is it all the way back when I'm developing my ideal client profile, like before I even begin to put names in my pipeline? Where should I trigger a system like this?
Yeah, before I answer to that, I will tell one more thing regarding to that.
Sure.
And that is also the mindset which is in the sales team built by the sales leader and the approach. Very often, either sales leaders or CEOs are pushing the salespeople, hey, commit me to higher quota, commit me to a higher expected revenue, because then I can report it to my investors. And they're pushing salespeople, come on, it's not going to be, don't be sandbagging. Make it a little bit higher. So they firstly need to allow this one happening. They need to come to the salespeople and say, hey, listen, let's not talk about nice things. Tell me, let's talk about the things which are honest and which are reality. And if we don't have the pipeline for this quarter, it's not ideal. It's not, we don't get the commission, but it's better to know it right now than in 3 months once the quarter finishes. And I would like you to have the realistic pipeline so we can start building the pipeline again. We're not living in the hopes. So this is for me the number one which has to happen in the organization. And I've seen that many times. I also, when I was as a head of sales, I also got this push. Hey, we need to report the numbers to investors. Don't be that pessimistic. And then, but then it's not credible enough.
Gotcha.
And back. So sorry for a little bit of side answer, but I thought
that's a really good point. If we're not honest at the outset, then nothing that we do from this point on is actually going to help, because we have to be realistic about our assets, our resources that we bring to the table, all the things that we can step onto the battlefield with. So if we're being honest, where do I trigger this system now? Does it, because I'm looking at all the ways the sale could fail before I'm ever in front of a prospect. Does this happen when I'm building out my call scripts, my sales strategy, when I'm mapping my pipeline? Does it happen when I'm researching my next market segment? Where do I start this?
Yeah, well, you can do that at every step into a little bit of different granularity and detail. So once you're prospecting, you have your ICPs. Then again, very often what happens, you define the ICPs. Sometimes the ICPs are defined based on where it's easiest to make a meeting and book a demo or present a solution, but it's not about how much money and what's the lifetime value of the customer. And you sometimes can you can get to the circle, hey, I'm having too many meetings and I'm not closing enough in my pipeline. So this one, also be strict about it. I have the ICP where I know if I allocate my time and I do everything correctly, at the end of the day, I earn the amount of money which I was supposed to earn for me and for my company. And the customer will not churn after 3 months or 4 months. They will stay with my company for 5 years. So this is one of the things. Once you have the sales process defined, and what is to have the sales process defined? The way how we do that is we have stages, and in between stages we have exit criteria. So if I want to move from stage 1 to stage 2, I need to know what is the need, what is the urgency, preliminary to know something about the stakeholders. I know that I won't know all of them, but if I do, it also depends on the business. If you do small, medium business, you don't need that many of them as an enterprise. So I get 2-3 stakeholders. I know also something about competition. I ask about them, and if there's competition, I know who's the competition. If I have this one completed, I move to another stage. And there I have another 5 milestones which I need to complete and to move to in order to move to another one. And this one afterwards works for you as a guidebook. So if I go on a first meeting and I start asking the questions, and very often where the opportunities fail at the beginning is not looking at the urgency. So people ask them about the need. They say, "Yeah, we have this need, but they have 1,000 other needs." So then the follow up question is, what would happen if you don't solve this issue this year, and why didn't you solve that issue last year? So you understand the urgency, what's happening in the organization, and then you can disqualify it. If they tell you, "Yeah, we have 1,000 priorities, and this is the level of priority," then it doesn't pay off to allocate the time on that. So that's how you do that along the way. And again, there is really important the view of the sales leader disregard how experienced you are, because 4 eyes sees more than just 2 eyes when you look at the opportunity. So the pipeline reviews, which you do once in 2 weeks, once in a month, once in a week, should be done in this very constructive way, I would call it. So we don't have this milestone, we don't have these 3 milestones, and we don't say, "Hey, it doesn't matter for this deal." It does matter that you don't have them. So you have to better collect them, because then, or you can continue with your deal working on that, but there should be red flag already. Hey, there's something not incorrect, and we most probably will fail.
The pipeline review is going to factor in a little later on in our system build. So let's put a pin in that one and put it in the parking lot, because it's going to be very important. So I want to make sure I've captured the trigger element right, because everything that you're teaching me is stuff that I'm going to use too. So I need to make sure I understand it, and I know that our listeners will understand it then too. So we want to be honest about our projections and our pipelines. And it sounds like when developing our ICP, I'm looking at who has the highest lifetime value, because that's who I want to structure this sales system around. We could go after retail transactions and figure out why they wouldn't buy, but you're going to be putting the same amount of effort in for less of a margin, less of a commission. So let's target who's going to be our highest lifetime value customer and build it for them. Next is sales process. If I don't have my sales process defined by entry and exit criteria across each stage, then it's going to be difficult for me to figure out why would somebody not want to enter the next stage, and why would somebody be forced to leave this stage, because we're essentially shoring up the gaps in our line with this process. So I've got my trigger element built. The R in trim is making this repeatable. Now here's where we're on the front line. And you mentioned one element that I think belongs in repeatable, which is asking how urgent is their need? Because if it's not urgent, they're not going to buy. So that's one element of the things that we need to build a checklist around. So here are all the reasons that this ideal client is not going to buy from me. I need to make sure that I identify those and shore them up. So what are the other reasons that I need to identify that somebody is not going to buy from me? Because what this looks like, of course, as you and I know, is going to look a little different for each company depending on what they're selling and who they're selling it to. But we're going to paint the broad strokes. Urgency is definitely one of those things. What are the other reasons someone's not going to buy from me?
Well, then very often what happens, you're talking to the wrong person. You're talking just to one person or two people who are the more receptive to you. So they answer every of your call. They go for every of your event. They participate on demos and they tell you, "Hey, let's organize demo for this person and that person." But they are not really credible for you in order to make a business. They don't move you forward. So that's also for you to map, who do I need to get and who do I need to influence in order to close the deal? So am I making like if I'm doing enterprise sales, I need to build up several champions inside of the company. I have to have several economic buyers. I have to have technical users, or technical validations, and so on. And I need to have it mapped. Usually what happens with the salespeople, they forget about it, or they want to talk to economic buyers, but they don't know how, or they invite them for the demos and they don't show up, or if they show up, they play on the phone and they don't get anything out of them. So that's also very, very often why the sales processes are too long, because then you can be stuck in the sales process for 2 years, just talking to one person who's telling you, "Hey, it's amazing. I'll get back to you, and I will push it inside of the organization," but actually nothing is happening. And
I got it. So I've got then how urgent is it? Are they a decision maker? Or are they just receptive to you? Have we mapped out all of the people inside the org that we need to identify and influence? What about
Yep.
the KPIs of the person that I'm going after? Are those going to be
Absolutely.
important for me to know? Okay.
Absolutely. I wouldn't call it a KPI. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
necessarily KPI, but like whenever you get somebody into the room, you should be asking the question and try to find out what's in it for him or for her. Why the person? For sure, there's some company use case telling, hey, we need to decrease the cost by 10% and so on. So we need to change the system from this one to that one. But what's in it for that person? If you get some IT admin, he might be, hey, I want to have the smoothest implementation. If you get sales leader, he would be telling you, I need to get the best UI, otherwise my salespeople would get lost. And if you get somebody else, he said, I need to this one because I have this and that because then I got promoted or not get fired. So you have to understand what's in it for me on the personal level of every person you get into the organization.
And then I would definitely want to make sure that I include, because there's a list that could probably be a dozen items long. We're only going to cover a few of them on the show just due to time, because I know we could dive into this
Yeah.
for a couple hours if we needed to. But I want to make sure I include something about differentiation or competition, because that's another reason someone wouldn't buy from me.
Mm.
If they perceive my competitor as being cheaper, higher quality, faster delivery time, do I need to assess any of that before I get hit in the face with it as an objection?
Yeah. This is a very valid point. Thanks for that. You need to understand the decision-making criteria and what is important for them. Ideally, you want to build influence the leader or the not leader, sorry, the stakeholders in a way that you put the decision criteria in your favor. So let's say you did the implementation for several multinational companies and your competition didn't. So you tell them, hey, this one you should pay attention to because those are this and that risks. Uh, for that to do that, you need to know your competition. You need to have so what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses? How can I land mines for them if we're in this military setup? So I will influence the stakeholders to ask them questions that I know the competition will not have the relevant answer for that. And for sure,
I love
and
it.
sometimes you can realize this battle we cannot win because the only thing what they look at is the price, how they purchase, and I cannot transfer the conversation into like the total cost of ownership is actually lower for our product or service than or that, or then you can leave it. This one also happens also sometimes, but if you do that, if you do your homework properly, then the percentage that you're losing against competition because some of the reasons will decrease a lot because then you influence most of the decision making criteria,
And
or you can
all the
explain
things that
that.
we've talked about so far are the very things that hold up a sale. They're the things that the objection that we get thrown at. They're like, well, let me go research that and let's meet in 2 weeks. Like these are all the things that delay sales or shut them down completely. So if we can build these solutions into our sales process, we can stop the
Absolutely.
rounds before they're ever fired. We can head these all off at the pass. Or we make the decision, as you mentioned, we actually can't beat our competition. So if that's your main criteria factor, whether this can be, delivered inside of 2 days, it'll take a week for us to get there. Maybe you're not a good fit and I can move on. I can go find people that don't mind the week-long wait or whatever that deciding factor is. So we've got the trigger element, making it repeatable. Now we're going to bring it into the iron trim, which is making this improvable. And this is where I feel like those sales huddles, those sales reviews that you mentioned earlier are going to become very, very important because I want to make sure that I'm looking at this and figuring out how do I get better at it. Am I looking at the reason for lost deals? Because probably those are things that I didn't really think about in the beginning that we should now shore up another gap in our sales process. How am I going to improve this system that's asking the question, why shouldn't these folks buy from us?
One more thing with the competition, which I
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to put there, it's absolutely okay to say, hey, we're quitting this segment because we're not this type of this vertical. We're not
Okay.
like there's low margins. The vertical is too small. We're not. Our product is not that fit as the competitions, and we have there's a bigger fish to fry at the other vertical. Where
Yeah.
we're better than the competition and we get better margins, better revenue. Absolutely fair. Because if you're a multinational, yeah, if you're IT provider or like software developer house with 1,000 people, developers, you will not do the small projects for 10,000 euros, right? Unless there is a potential to sell for 5 million euros or dollars. It doesn't really matter. Well, so you leave out that space and you leave it for the small ones because they will not cover your operations.
Yep.
Uh,
All right. So
and
to improve
once
it,
again,
what am I doing?
if you can repeat the question, sorry,
Yeah,
once I
absolutely.
started
Absolutely. Yeah.
answering it.
No, you're fine. So I want to make sure that I'm improving this system. So I've used it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. I want to make
Yep.
sure that it's getting better, that it's not just static. Because what worked 5 years ago, as the market changes, as the economy changes, as buyer needs and process change, my old systems are going to fall out of date. So I want to make sure I'm keeping this up to date. What are some things I need to
Yep.
look at? Is it lost deals because probably in there was an objection
Mm-hmm.
or I didn't follow a process? How would you say that I make sure the system stays up to date?
Absolutely. You look at your conversions. So you see, am I getting to the meetings and am I getting from meetings to opportunities? Again, you should have defined what does opportunity mean for you. And because then otherwise you won't be able to measure it. And what's my win rate if I'm from the opportunity to win? And then you start looking at the, and again, if you implement something in the organization, there still will be some people that are better than the other ones. They will never be all equal. So again, my approach is always blueprint the best ones, and that's also for the hire. So what are the threats I'm looking at? What are the profiles I'm looking at? If I'm getting a new salesperson into the organization, well, I would like to get the replication of the ones who performs the best, right? So I start, and you see the similarities all the time. So that's one of the things. Lost deal reviews, for sure. You have to all the time measure it, because at one point you're still losing against competition. They change their sales system, they change their propositions, and you get it that the customers start telling you, hey, you know what, we decided to go with our competition because of some of the reasons, and you hear it within the week 2 times or 3 times. That should be a red flag again in your organization, and get all the salespeople together and start thinking of how you can tackle it. And for sure,
Love it.
it is, what organizations tend to forget, and the high performing does, is that they have the peer-to-peer sharing for the salespeople. They facilitate it and they share them the insights from the market. I spoke to some of the organizations which grew through from 3 million euros ARR to 30 million euros ARR within 2 years. And they were exactly facilitating. That was one of the things they were telling me. Hey, I want my salespeople to share the know-how. And very often, when we get to some organizations to train the salespeople, the biggest value is that we put them into one room and let them talk to each other, because they're scattered across the different countries, different continents, and they don't talk to each other. And sales leaders tend to forget about it. So this is also very crucial, because then you get the right, all the information from the market all the time.
So to improve this system, then you've talked about making sure you're tracking the people that are converting the best, blueprint what they're doing, get their insight, their wisdom, their knowledge, and their profiles, and also to look at the reason that you've lost sales. So make sure that you're debriefing those, because the reasons that you're still losing sales are the same things that you need to update your system with. If you're losing sales because of X reason, how do we head that off at the pass? Because that's a reason people aren't buying. And you actually gave us the M and trim or early on inside of the improved part of this, which you talked about. Look at your conversions. That's how we're going to measure the success of this. If we're heading these things off at the pass, we should be converting more meetings. We should be having a higher pipeline velocity, moving prospects from one stage of the pipeline to the other. And of course, final conversion on the win, on the sale. So great sales system. I want to make sure I give time people to get out there and begin using it, mapping it out for their unique organization. So Jakub, if they got value from this, how do they find out more about you, sir? How do we get into LinkedIn? How do we get on your website? Where should people go next to get more of your insights?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, JKUBHON, SALESDOCk. I guess you'll find me there. By the way, uh, we're having a webinar tomorrow on the economic buyers. So the ones who are listening live, they can eventually join us. I know we're having their series of the webinars all the time about improving this, how to improve the sales skills. So I think this is the best approach, is to do or sign up to our newsletter as well
And then
on
if
the
I
website.
wanted to get on your newsletter with your website, is that salesdoc.com?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's SALESDOCK.com, right?
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I know with anybody that's in systems and process and sales, you're going to learn from. So make sure that you're connecting up with Jacob. But for us here at Bulletproof Selling, if you're catching us on the live stream, or you're catching this via video, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. And if you're listening, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, any of the places podcasts can be found, best thing you can do for us, leave us a review. Let other salespeople know that hope doesn't have to be part of their sales strategy anymore. Well, Jacob, it's been a pleasure serving the sales community alongside you with one more system to remove hope and replace it with certainty. Let's get out there, sir, and make selling bulletproof.
Thank you very much again for this interview and conversation. It was really good.